So now I want to talk about the critical numbers in your business. So when we talk about numbers in business, what's the first thing that comes to mind for people? Most of the time it's going to be this one. Turnover. But a good friend of mine once said to me, it's not about turnover, it's about leftover. So even though turnover is a number that we can easily identify within the business, we need to be thinking in terms of profit. Profit's what's left over once we take all our expenses out of our business. And if we think about where profit comes from, it's really about taking that turnover number, multiplying it by our margins, and it'll give us our profit. Now the good news is that your P&L, your accounting system will give you all of this information. So you can monitor your business by checking these things out. So these are critical numbers, but there's one problem with these numbers. And the problem is simple. These numbers are a result. What I mean by that is they're a lagging indicator. They tell you what happened. They don't tell you what's happening. So we need to start thinking in terms of what are the leading indicators and how do we tell whether we're actually going to achieve our profit or achieve our turnover. Now the next measure that we need to be thinking about is where turnover comes from, which is from our customers. Now here's the good news. Yes, you do need customers to make money in business, but you don't just get customers and generate turnover. They actually need to spend money with you. So there's a couple of things we need to think about with our customers. The first one is how much money do they spend on average? Now when we talk about how much money they spend on average, we want to measure it on a per transaction basis. What I mean by that is what is the average dollar sale of your customer, which means how much they're spending per invoice. And once we know that, we multiply that by the customer, and then we multiply that by this one, which is the number of transactions, how often they spend with us, and that gives us our turnover. So you can see we're starting to get into more of a leading indicator than a lagging indicator within our business, because these are things we can measure transactionally as they occur. Now, next question is, where do customers come from? Now, most people will answer this by saying, well, they come from marketing, right? Absolutely true. Customers come from marketing, but when we generate a lead in a business, what do we need to do to actually convert that into a customer? That's right, we have to convert them. So if we look at these numbers now, we're starting to get the critical numbers in every business. Now, I think that this is so critical that every business should have a dashboard like this that they're referring to on a weekly or monthly basis. Lagging indicators, which is about money in the bank. Leading indicators, which is about what marketing is working and what's my sales process doing, how am I converting. Because let's think about how this works, and we'll put some numbers in here so you can gain a better understanding. So let's imagine that we do start testing and measuring everything within our business. We start counting. And when we test and measure everything within our business, we could count how many leads come in on average. Now, for this simple exercise, I'm going to put some really round numbers in here. Let's imagine we measured how many leads came into our business, and over a period of 12 months, we measured 4,000. Now, neither good nor bad because it depends on the business. We also measured how many of those converted into clients, and it was 25%, which means we end up with 1,000 clients. We have 1,000 clients coming into this business. Now, for simplicity of calculation, we know that the average person spends $100, and we know that they come and do business with us twice a year, so 2 transactions. So the turnover of this business is 1,000 times 100 times 2, which is $200,000. So far so good, right? Now we also know that our margin is 25%. And so what that means is 25% of 200 equals $50,000 profit. Now, not complicated, but I just want to demonstrate something to you. Because when we measure these numbers within your business, we start to understand the critical numbers, and we actually start to understand where we need to focus our energy and our activity. So what happens next? So if we start measuring these things, 2 things are going to happen immediately. Because there's a simple rule that says what gets focused on grows, which means as soon as we start measuring these numbers, your business will automatically start to grow. The second thing that occurs is it highlights the areas that we should be focused on when we're growing our business. So let's go through some of these numbers, and we'll just start at the top. And I want you to think about your business as I go through this example, because it's pretty critical. So we're going to look at your lead generation within your business, and we're going to review it. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and work out how we can grow leads. So How can we do that? Well, there's at least 100 different ways we can generate leads for a business. All of them cost money. Some of them just cost time, but time is money. But let's assume we focus on things like maybe SEO, AdWords, Facebook advertising, even local paper. It depends on the industry. All I want to do is I want to create a 10% growth, which means 4,000 would equal 4,400. Now, thinking of your business, my question is, if we focused on 10% growth in leads over the next 12 months, would it be easy or hard? Now, for the majority of people I ask this question, they go, well, if we focused on it, it wouldn't be too hard. It'd be pretty straightforward. 12 months is a fair amount of time. Excellent. So let's look at what happens when we have a 10% growth in leads. Now, because these numbers are all multiplied, that just means we're going to have a 10% growth in profit. So 400 more leads up here, 5,000 more profit down here. Fairly straightforward. But this is where it gets really interesting. Because now we're going to move from leads to conversion. Now, what does conversion mean? It means sales, right? Now, when often I talk to people in business about sales, they don't really think much about sales. They just think in terms of generating leads and converting those people. But I want you to think about how we go about improving your conversion rate by 10%. So not to 35, but just to 27.5%. That's a 10% improvement. Now, I'll give you a clue. A couple of the ways we can do this is actually by creating a sales process. Another way is providing something like a guarantee. Another way might be actually just improving your website and making sure that people have more information before they make a decision about your business. There's literally hundreds of ways we can improve your conversion rate, but I don't want to go aggressive here. I just want to go for a 10% growth. So if we focused on that for the next 12 months within your business, is it possible to increase conversion by 10%? Now, there is an exemption to this. Some people say, well, no, our conversion rate's 90%. All our business comes from word of mouth. My concern with that is that if you don't have a proactive lead generation strategy and things go quiet, how do you then continue the business growth? So as soon as you start implementing outbound or proactive lead generation, your conversion rates will drop. And as they drop, it's neither good nor bad. It's just a result of what sort of strategies you have in place. So let's continue on this thought process. 10% growth here, 10% growth here. What does that do to the number of customers? Now, for some people, they're going to think 10% and 10% is 20%. But the truth of the matter is, if you go back to high school maths, you'll notice there's a multiplication here, which means that we get the compounding growth. Instead of 1,000 new customers, we have 1,210. Now, it doesn't sound like much, 10 extra customers, but I want you to think about what just happened. The majority of business owners will go straight for one strategy, which is usually lead generation. And instead of doing 10% there and 10% there, they'll put 20% in leads. Now, the problem I have with that is it's not compounding, which means we're not getting the extra 10 clients. So when we start thinking about 10% growth, and we compound to get 21% growth in our number of customers, we're starting to build momentum within our business. Now, I'm going to continue through this. Think about average dollar sale. How do we get people to spend more on average? You know, the kings of doing this at McDonald's. They've been doing it for years with their meal deals and their upsizes. And the people who are doing it are actually teenage kids. So my question to you is, are you doing upsize or cross-sell or upsells within your own business, and is it structured? Because if it isn't, I promise you that getting a 10% growth here is simple. $110. So we'll keep going through here. Number of transactions. How do we get people to spend with us more frequently? Well, this is really a subset of marketing, because this is about making sure that people come back. Now, we can do this through loyalty strategies. We can do it through newsletter lists. Once again, there's hundreds of different ways that we can get people to improve the number of times they spend with us. We can add new products to the range. But most people in business, they're so busy just trying to deal with leads or trying to sell that they're not really thinking about how they get their existing customers to come back. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but it takes 6 times more money to generate new business than it does to get an existing client to come back. So these strategies here are actually a lot more effective. So we want to go for a 10% increase here again, which is 2.2 transactions per annum instead of 2. So what's happening here? We've got 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, which could be 40%. But the truth of the matter is, because of compounding, we've taken this business from a turnover of 200,000 to 292,820. So that's a 46% growth in business turnover. Now, think back to when I asked you about these growths of 10%, whether they were easy or hard, because most people believe they're fairly easy. So when we have 4 growths of 10% in 4 different areas and we combine them, we start getting substantial growth within the business. Now this will only work if you measure everything. It does not work if you just go out there and just put strategies in place randomly. We can keep going. How do we improve margins? There's 2 ways. We either increase our price or reduce our costs, or both. So increasing margins within a business is not as hard as most people think, but they're scared of it. People are scared of increasing their price for one reason, right? They fear that they will lose clients if they increase their price, which is valid, right? We don't want to lose clients, but how do we know if a price increase is going to cause us to lose clients or not? Well, there's only one way to know, and that's by measuring this one up here, conversion. Because if I increase my price by 10% and my conversion doesn't change, then I haven't lost any clients. So I'm not saying we should just go blanketly increasing our pricing. We should be doing it strategically. But here's a suggestion for you. If your customers are not complaining about how dear you are, then you must be too cheap. Because no one's going to complain about that one. So we want to go for a 10% increase here. Once again, 27.5. And what happens is 27.5% of 292,820, we end up with about $80,000 in profit. So we've gone from $50,000 to $80,000 in profit. Now, it's a very simple formula. It's not complicated, but for most people, they don't understand these numbers because they're too busy. What I'm suggesting to you, this is about working harder, not smarter. Understanding how you can get a 61% growth in your business over the next 12 months should be pretty compelling for most business owners. But the reason they're not doing it, they're just too busy working in the business instead of working on the business. This is working on the business. So starting to understand your critical numbers within your business, starting to use strategies to increase those areas specifically, and you can start to see that you can have a compounding effect on the growth of your profitability.